Hello there, it is another exciting edition of Lunchtime Chat on KBN TV, the finest television. Welcome to today's Lunchtime Chat show. I'm your host and my name is Taizia Chela. You're joining us live from our mass media studios, and you can also follow this conversation. We're live on our Facebook page, KBN TV. Apart from that, we're also live on DSTV 279, Top Star Channel 102 and Go TV Channel 27. And I'm your host. My name is Taizia Chela. Of course, today we get to look at one of the videos that has been trending online, and we'll also get to look at the progress as we head into the election. You are aware that in a few months' time we'll be having our general election, and currently we also have parliamentarians, those that want to stand as members of parliament, going to file in their nominations. Apart from that, we'll also have presidential filing in of nominations also taking place. In case you are not aware, as of today, we have, that is Mr. Richard Silumbe of the Leadership Movement Party, who is already at Mulungushi International Conference Center. Now he comes from the Leadership Movement. He's the president for that particular party. Apart from that, we also expect to see Socialist Party President Dr. Fred Membe. Apart from that, we also right now, I must say that right now, Sean Tembo, who is a running mate, and he is part of the PEP political party. Now, he was the president, and he decided to just appoint Mr. Chanda Katotowe to be the presidential candidate. So they were also at the Mulungushi International Conference Center. But as this was happening, on the other hand, I mentioned that there are also parliamentary nominations that are also taking place. And we saw a video which circulated online where Gary Nkombo, now if you are so up to date with current affairs, Gary Nkombo has been a UPND member for some time, and if you watched the 2021 general elections, I think he was one of those people who was always at the polling stations at Mulungushi International Conference Center. He's been supporting the United Party for National Development, and then prior to even these nominations, we saw when he was dropped, he also mentioned that he will continue to remain loyal to HH and the United Party for National Development. Last evening, we saw a video where he said, because the people have called upon him to, recontest. He's been a member of parliament since 2006 now, because the people called upon him to recontest, and he decided to file in his nomination at parliament level today. And some cadres, suspected UPND cadres, attacked him. Reasons? Well, we don't know. And on Lunchtime Chat this afternoon, we'll be getting to discuss what is the status of cadreism in Zambia. Is cadreism ending anytime soon? And what we witnessed, should Zambians, or rather voters, prepare themselves, or rather should they be scared of cadres? Because if they can attack their very own member who has been a very loyal member to the UPND, what of other citizens who don't even belong to the party? And we'll also be looking at opposition unity. We've seen some alliances. We saw yesterday, we saw Makebi Zulu, who is now the running mate to Brian Mundubile, also being, unveiled yesterday. So we've seen a number of alliances, people getting together, the Orange Alliance, the Waza Alliance. And this afternoon in the studio, I am joined by Mr. Muhabi Lungu, who was the Secretary General, to help us discuss these topics that we'll be addressing this afternoon. Welcome to Lunchtime Chat.
Thank you for having me here. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I must say it's good to have you. I remember not long ago there were those other issues to do with the party that you belonged to.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, and I'm sure you also came out to just talk about it. But a number of people were asking, what's really happening now that we're heading towards the general election? Then we see some members of a political party being dropped and being told to say, because you decided to belong to a certain alliance of this party. How's the situation? Maybe if you can start from
Well,
there.
I mean, we haven't resolved it from the point of view that some of our colleagues who were doing these things are still trying to undermine us. But we did hold a executive committee meeting about 3 weeks ago at the house of Honorable Kapembo Simbao, and we had a full quorum, in fact, far past the quorum. So in terms of the heart of the party, we are in complete compliance to our constitution, and the party has been functioning. And the decision to go to Waza, to eventually have Kapembo Simbao win as a candidate there, was sanctioned by the party. The National Executive Committee, that is the NL, National Leadership Council, met, they deliberated, and we agreed that we would go there and compete. And as you may be aware, Honorable Simbao subsequently won the elections in Waza. But we couldn't go and file for a number of reasons. But our objective from the very beginning was that in order for us to be able to put up an effective challenge towards the UPND, we needed to try and coalesce behind one candidate. And we eventually agreed in Waza to support Brian Munduvile, which we are doing. And so we are able to do that. And so I think that from that perspective, things are okay. And as you know, he filed yesterday together with Muhabi Lungu as running mate. And what is remaining now is for us to basically convince the people of Zambia that he's the real deal. Yeah.
All right. Maybe what most people would have been asking would be, why should another alliance support, another alliance?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll give you some figures, and I think I've shared with them before here. Look, many of us who are in the opposition political parties are not there because it is convenient to be there. It's because we believe in something, okay? At least from my perspective, we would like to believe in something. I do believe in something very strongly. And the belief is that the way the government has been handling the affairs of the country, meaning the current administration of the UPND, regarding matters to do with the economy, regarding matters to do with national security, regarding to do with the national state, that they have not been doing them to the expectations that many of us in the opposition expected, that they have not been doing them to the promises which they made, okay, and that in some cases they are creating a very dangerous environment for the survival of Zambia. So our objective, obviously, is to be able to say to the Zambian people, we can do it better. I mean, any political party, the objective is to say, we can do it better. Now, that requires that you go in an election and you defeat the one who is now in government. Now, when you look at the statistics over the last 5 years, and then the state of the opposition in the manner that we have been, any realistic person would have to arrive to the conclusion that it will not be that easy to defeat the current government because of the environment which has been said, and I think we've discussed them on other forums even here. So anyone who looks at the figures would know that it would require a coalescing around one single candidate in order to get the numbers that are required to defeat him. Because you don't defeat an incumbent government by wishful thinking. You have to plan. So let me just give you those numbers, okay? Now, one, according to the registered voters, we are now 8.73 something million, 8.7 million voters, okay? According to our constitution, you can only win with 50+1%, okay? You can't win if you are getting 50,000 votes. You have to get 50+1 of the vote. Now, I want to give you two scenarios. I hope you are following. You can even jot down the numbers so that I can try to prove to people, and I want people after the elections to come back to me and say, you said, okay? So I want to give two scenarios. Now, if the voter turnout in the next elections in 2020, in 90 days' time, okay? If the voter turnout will be the same as the voter turnout in 2021, we will be expecting 70.61% of the registered voters. If you take that number of 70.61 voter turnout, almost 71%, okay? If you calculate 8.7, you get to about 6 million something. Okay, I have got the exact figures. Okay, you get slightly above 6 million. Okay, in order for you to divide, in order to get 50%, you divide that number. Okay, you get to 3 million. So you need to win by at least 3 million plus 1. Okay, that is the higher case scenario. So you keep that number. Whoever has to win, if the voter turnout is 70%, has to win and get 3 million votes, above 3 million votes. Let's go to the lower case scenario. In 2016, the voter turnout in 2016, which is the year before, okay, was 56%. Okay, and if you calculate 56% of the same number I gave you, it comes to about 4.9 million as voter turnout. If you divide that number by half and you add a 1, you get to 2.39. Okay, so let's say, for argument's sake, 2.4. We round it off. This is a range. I doubt whether we will get a number that will exceed 70%. We could, but it's highly unlikely. And I doubt whether we will get a number that is below 56%. So the lower figure here is that the minimum that any candidate has to get to 50 plus 1, the lower case is 2.4. In the higher case, it is 3.0 something. Let's say 3.1 million voters. Now, if you look at the history of our country, and I've said this in an article before, we have had, prior to this one, we've had 49 candidates that have stood. Those 49 candidates, 84% of them get below 1%. Okay, and it will happen even in this one, whether we like it or not. If all 26 are going to file, the chances is that more than 80% of those won't even get 1%. And the reason is very simple, because majority of those who have filed will not have filed for all the 1,558 councillors. They will not have filed for all of the 226 members of parliament. And those are the key drivers to ensure that they get your name across the country. If you don't have those, there is no way that you get anywhere near 15%. It's just mathematics, okay? So, majority of people who even have filed now, in the last elections, got below 1%. For them to jump, I think the highest third person got about 25,000. The third, because it was President Hakainde, then there was President Lungu. Then you had the third candidate. I don't want to mention his name because people get offended. Yeah. Okay, but there was a third candidate who got 25,000 something. Now all of the rest were below that. Okay, now to suggest that any of those candidates who have got 1%, even if the UPND have performed very poorly, that they will certainly jump by 1,000 or 2,000% to come and reach at minimum 2,400,000 votes, or to reach the thing, it is an almost impossible task. I can tell you this. It is almost an impossible task. No one has been able to do it in this country before. So even HH, it took him 5 elections. Michael Sata, it took him 3. There's usually a progression. You just don't leap because the public has already judged you. Okay? While it's different for a candidate who they've never judged, because you don't know how they will judge him. Okay? So it is for this reason that many of us, for the last 2 years, have been pushing for us to coalesce around a candidate who we thought was new, had not been judged with, didn't get the lower scores, who we can all then sell to the Zambian people that this is a capable person in order to challenge the government. So it would have been futile for me to suggest that me, Muhabi Lungu, without an older political party, can put myself in the race and all of a sudden be able to get 3 million votes. It's a pipe dream.
So what are you saying with some of these opposition political parties we have, and they've been on the ballot paper? Are you saying voters as well should also get to look at how the elections have been done in the past?
That is right.
As they get to decide and look at who has been,
That is right.
Is that what you're saying?
You have picked it beautifully, my dear. This is exactly what many of us have been saying. What we are saying with the voters is that if we want to defeat this government, let us choose a candidate who we think has got the greatest capacity of defeating them, so that we all coalesce around that candidate. Because if we don't, what will happen is that we will divide the vote between many, many players, and we will end up with a candidate who will possibly not get 50+1. Now, look, the UPND at the moment are more or less guaranteed 3 provinces in terms of winning. I don't think any of us in the opposition will beat HH in Southern Province, in Northwestern and Western. I don't think so. He may not perform as well as he did in the last election, because I know that there are a lot of people hurting in Northwestern Province and obviously in Western Province. So, but I think that HH will still win those provinces, meaning that we've got 7 other provinces on this side. Okay, now if he wins strongly in those 3, and then for us, our voters split the vote between 5 candidates on this side, it means that we split the 7. Okay, and he will also be getting from that area, meaning that we will be at a disadvantage. Okay, so it is important that the voters vote strategically. They have to vote strategically. We have to be able to zoom in on one who we think is the most capable. Of course, for us,
but if you
we think
that the 2021 elections,
Yeah.
and if at all we've been following
Yeah.
patterns, yes, you said Edgar Lungu was coming second
Yeah.
to HH, but this is a party that was in power,
Yeah.
so probably people expected that to happen. But now, after Edgar Lungu, the person who was coming third was Harry Kalaba. And then why didn't you, as WASA, support Harry Kalaba and the Orange Alliance?
Yeah.
Because if you look at people like Brian Mundubile, who
Yeah.
is now heading the Tonse Alliance,
Yeah.
he comes from the Patriotic Front. Well, so why not,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the reason. Okay, there are 2 things here I must say. As I said, I don't want to mention any names other than the person who I'm supporting. The reason for this is that even if a person is very factual and is trying to be as honest as possible, their supporters think that you are denigrating their supporter and that you are insulting them. I've been attacked many times, even for just being honest. So I don't want to go straight to that question. What I can say, though, in answer to your question, okay, and I'm being very careful. I have said to you just earlier on that one of the reasons why many candidates who file for presidency don't do as well as they should is that because they don't have a party structure which is able to identify councillors in all over the country. So we've got 1,558, I believe, council seats, and we have got 226. Majority of people who go out there to be able to campaign for the presidency are unable to fill all those vacancies simply because they don't have the structure. The PF, being a former government and a former political party in the ruling, has got that capacity. Okay, they demonstrated it in 2001, and even though the PF have been going through some difficulties, they still have remained as the primary political party that has got the structures to do that. Okay, so it made sense for many of us to try and identify a party already with members of parliament in the House. I am sorry, the gentleman that you mentioned, because I don't want to decampaign him, the gentleman you mentioned didn't have those members of parliament. And the gentleman you mentioned did not have all of those councillors. The PF had a lot of councillors, and they also had a lot of MPs. So what we were working to as WASA and the Zambia We Want was to be able to try and see whether we can help to refine the party that is already is the main opposition and already has those structures. And of course, Brian Mundubile was leader of the House. So he was selected among his peers as to be trusted to be leader of the House. And also he won an election with him. So I think that it made sense that the person in racing, if you see, we talk about the person who is in pole position, meaning who is at the front, who has won enough races for them to place you at the. You don't go for someone who is number 2 or number 3 or number 4. You look at the institutional framework which is at the pole position. And that is why we came on to support Honorable Brian Mundubile. And we as WASA and the Zambia We Want worked tirelessly to be able to achieve what has now been achieved, in the sense that you've got Brian Mundubile as a presidential candidate and Honorable Muhabi Lungu as a running mate. Now, we are not responsible for the entire things. Of course, there were discussions going on in many places. But when we were approached, it was by both sides, by both the Tonsi Alliance and by the Pamosi Alliance, we made it very clear to them that we were in a position to support if all the three of us can come together. If we can have the Pamosi Alliance, if we can have the Tonsi Alliance and the Woza Alliance all come together for us to identify who would be the candidate, the running mate, and so on. And that is what has happened. So from our perspective, we're very happy with this, and we'll push it. For me, it really doesn't matter whether I'm a beneficiary or not. I will have you know, my dear sister, that I applied. I applied to stand on the Tonsi Alliance after we all came together to stand for Lusaka Central. And I have not been chosen. And I think I would have been a very good candidate. But somebody else has been chosen. My colleague, Charity Lupa, has been chosen. And I will do everything possible to support her candidature and the candidature of Brian Mundulwe. Why? I'm disappointed that I wasn't picked. But I've always been saying, all of us, that this issue is bigger than Muhabi Lungu. Okay? This issue is big. It should be bigger than any small individual. We have got an existential crisis in our country, and I think we need to be able to give a message to the UPND government that we will not tolerate what they have been trying to do in our country, and that is basically to divide us. So it is very important that we all coalesce and be able to support a structure which we think has got the capacity to win.
All right.
I mean, that is my advice.
All right. We're getting into a very, very sensitive period, of course, just with the filing in of nominations.
Yes.
We've seen other political parties not, probably the issues are disqualifying even a presidential candidate, saying there were some issues to do with the Secretary General, to do with him being bankrupt. But now today's events where we saw Gary Nkombo being attacked by some suspected UPND cadres. How do you look at the current process that's taking place?
Well, I think that never has a situation been so bad in terms of the inability of the institutional framework which we've put in place to govern our democratic process as it has been now. So the weaknesses are not the fact that, for example, in the case of the party cadres, it's not that the party cadres were violent. We know that sometimes party cadres tend to try and abuse the law, okay? Or even the fact that there was a person who clearly knew that he was bankrupt, but he thought that he could test the law. Clearly, I think that maybe he figured he's aligned to the UPND and they may have known that they would have ignored the law. Is that the institutions sometimes fail us. So let me deal with the issue, first of all, of the Mazobuka incident.
The one for
Gary Nkombo, Honorable Gary Nkombo.
Yes.
Look, you could see in the video that the police were powerless. And Gary's wife was at one point tossed over and she had to stand up and go defend her husband.
She had to get on a chair.
She had to get on a chair. And she was more braver and more aggressive in defending Gary than the police were. Okay? Now, you have to ask the question, why were the police that intimidated by a single individual who was actually manhandling your former member of parliament? Okay? Why? And the issue is very clear, because it was UPND, and in the minds of the police officer, if I manhandle this guy, that if the president sees it or the IG or whoever, they may fire me, because he is not sure as to whether that person has been given not authority by the toppest or by his boss or whatever. So that the institutions of the UPND becomes more powerful than the institution of the party. So we are going back to the party and its government. Why should it be like that? That a police officer cannot cannot restrain a UPND cadre from attacking a candidate who wants to farm. Now, let's flip it the other way. Ask yourself, all of the viewers that are able to see this should ask themselves, if that political cadre was, say, a Tonse cadre or a Zambia We Want cadre trying to stop a candidate who belongs to the UPND, you know what the police would have done there? He would have been airlifted from that place so fast and thrown at the back of the van and stepped on, and taken to the police immediately. That's what would have happened. And I'm not lying. Even members of the UPND know that this is a fact. That if it was me trying to stop Jack Mwimbo in his constituency, I might have even been beaten severely by the police. Okay? So, clearly this is, in the first case, it's a case of the police being shown that they have no power. That is one. Two, who is Gary Nkombo? Is he an ordinary Jack from the streets?
He's someone who's been a member of the UPND.
He's someone who's been a member of the UPND. In fact, joined the UPND before HH joined it, in terms of visibility. And as you said, he's been a fighter for them in the last election. He was there at the electoral commission.
He's been a member of parliament since 2006.
That is right. This is a senior member of the UPND who, when he was relieved of his job, there was no condemnation from the president that he's either stolen or he's done whatever. We were not even given any reason. And he's bold enough to believe that, look, since I've been left out, I can stand as an independent. And they treat him like that. So now the next question is, if they can do that to a member of that stature within the party, what will they do to someone who doesn't have any stature? And the majority of members of parliament who are filing in, there are many fresh new ones who nobody has even heard of. If a person like, say, I have a cousin who lives in Mazabuka, okay, but he carries an Eastern name, okay, but he's lived in Mazabuka all his life because his mother is from there and the father relocated there and they've been working in Mazabuka. Assuming, and he feels that he's part of the people. Assuming there's a person like Lungu who then tried to file in as an independent there in Mazabuka, you know what they would do to him? If they can do that to someone who was one of their own, okay, who was filing, was a member of the UPND, just ask the question. Suppose you were someone who is outside Mazabuka, who is not known, and dared to challenge the might of the UPND. What are they going to do them? So you have to ask, how many people have filed in the UPND who are not from the Southern Province? I think we have to ask.
But again, I think also getting to Mumbwa, there's also another clip where we saw there were two UPND candidates who wanted to, file in at the same time, and then some, cadres were also trying to stop the other one because there was already another person who was filing in. I don't know if, Director, if you can play that particular clip as well, where we saw some UPND cadres trying to stop another UPND member who had also received an adoption certificate from filing in. If that clip is also ready, maybe if you can also just play that so that the viewers out there can also be up to date with what was happening. That's in Mumbwa Town Council. And apart from that, as we wait for that particular clip to be ready, Minders Matter, he was a UPND member. That's for Kamala Ward 5, and he recently resigned and cited some of the issues to do with how some laws are being passed. And then he resigned, but again today we've seen that he has gone to, file in his nomination as an independent candidate. How do you look at that? Because probably him, I think it was just a smooth ride. Could it be that maybe Gary Nkombo is a threat, according to you, who's, seeing things from, a different angle, who's not a UPND member?
Yeah, no, he definitely, Gary Nkombo is a threat. And many of us speculate that even his removal from a ministerial position, we had heard that he was considering contesting either then at the time, maybe challenging HH, or that knowing that even if HH wins this one, I don't think he will. We're going to try very hard to make sure that our candidate wins. But let's assume that he does. It would be his last term. And we all think that even if that were to be the case, that there will be an attempt to try and change the constitution so that we have one yai. And so Gary, in a sense, represented a person who people thought within the UPND was that he would counter that. So it may be all of this that they want to make sure that they don't. Now, You also brought in the issue of Mumbwa and this other person.
Yeah, and the director says the clip is ready. Maybe if you can also play that
okay, maybe.
particular
should I wait?
clip. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
okay.
So that
let's look
as
at
you
that.
get to respond here on the right. All right, so that is just a clip that we are from showing you. So, and the story reads that violence erupts at Mumbai Town Council as MP Hamatala, one of the two UPND candidates who had received adoption certificates, attempted to enter at Mumbai Civic Center to file in his nomination as another candidate, Clarence Chisuku, was already inside the Civic Center for his candidacy nomination. The confusion.
Yeah, as I was saying, that you can see how powerless the policeman is there. I mean, the party cadres are literally manhandling the police officer and throwing him away for the car in order to get to the other person. And they're able to do that because they know that they've got the power. You know, and that we have to end. You know that one of the reasons the Patriotic Front lost the elections in 2021 was that the general public in this country said they didn't want that. They didn't want the cadres to have more power than the police. One of the reasons that the United National Independence Party 35 years ago lost the election wasn't only the longevity of Kaunda. It was also because they were tired of what was then referred to as unit vigilantes. And those were party cadres. The people of this country have always been very sensitive to having the power of the police taken away by political parties, and also to having their environment as individuals in the public being taken care of by political parties. So we all should be sensitive to these issues and ensure that the institutions of state are strong enough to prevent things like that. In the same vein, even all of us must know that electoral contest is not life and death. You know, because we behave as if elections in this country is a matter of life and death. And that people are even prepared to kill for it. People are even prepared to harm a former member because it is such an important thing to people that it represents the end and the beginning. And we have to change this. It is a contest. If people choose you, they choose you. If you lose, get out and let others govern. If you are not the one selected, don't start creating excuses for why you should not support the person who has been supported. So I think that is really, really very important. From the behavior of the UPND, because all the cases you've mentioned here are all UPND, okay? From this behavior, you can see that the UPND are seeing these elections as a matter of life and death. You know, and so all of us who are going out there to campaign for our candidates should be aware and should be on guard. I would never support violence, nor would I ever urge. But you can just say we have to be careful. We have to be as peaceful as possible. We have to try and have a message to the people of Zambia and not to try and compete with the UPND on the level of violence. The voters are intelligent enough to differentiate, and they will make a decision on their own. We don't need to compete.
All right. So now, what should be the next step for the opposition? Looking at what is really happening, already we're seeing this intra-party violence that we're talking about. What should people in opposition, the opposition political parties, the alliance that you belong to, what should they start putting in place now? Because I think I remember there was a certain video that had gone viral where a certain opposition leader had said, if they do this, then we'll also get to respond in the same way they're getting to respond. But away from that, how should the opposition behave and how prepared should they be for the upcoming general election in a few months?
You know, many years ago, as I was mentioning in 1991, it was a very big thing that for the first time we were in a multi-party system for 17 years over one-party state. And I was involved with a group then called the Zambia Independent Monitoring Team. And there were so many other foreign observers that were involved. And the Electoral Commission and other groupings, the donor community and so on, were able for us to sit down and create mechanisms of coping in which if there is some disagreements between the warring factions within the electoral contest, there was somewhere where you could go to be able to diffuse this kind of situation. The Electoral Commission themselves at that time were very, very independent. We have doubts about the independence of the Electoral Commission. Obviously, you know, these have been raised over the period of the last 2 years, partly because there are known individuals who were clearly members of the ruling government who are now on the commission, and that you can't dispute, okay? So there is that issue. But there is also the fact that the police themselves don't seem to be disentangling themselves from this. The police are supposed to be bringing all of us together to make sure that there will be peace. But we've seen that the police tend to take a side, or they are afraid to do it, which is what I'm saying. So the only thing we can appeal to, for me, I have 3 appeals. One, I don't think that we in the opposition should take the position of let us also go and fight them. I think that that would be a mistake. Our priority will be to try and get to the voters and avoid this sort of infraction, because I think that that is what the UPND government wants to get us involved in. It would be a mistake for us to catch the bait. I think we must try and find any innovative way to ensure that we comply and get to the voters. That is one. 2, we wish to appeal to the police, and I, as Secretary General, will be pushing that our colleagues, as part of the alliance, we need to have a meeting with the police and set the rules down and have an inter-party dialogue with the other side so that we can try and strengthen the power of the police in order to ensure that the electoral process will be smooth and that it will be peaceful. So that is one of the things that we are going to be working on as we move forward. Thirdly, we also implore the donor community and the observers that have been asked to come to be able to be extra vigilant in terms of ensuring that peace prevails. But over and above the issue of just peace prevailing, we also need to implore the donor community and the observers to ensure that in certain areas where, like Mazabuka, where they can manhandle their own, the question to ask is that if we've got observers in a meeting like that, will our observers be left there? And if the political cadres decide to remove our monitors, will the police be able to stop them? In the last election, in 2021, we have so much evidence suggesting that observers, even of the government then, were removed in Southern Province and Northwestern Province. You recall that there was one person who was even killed. Given the behavior of the UPND currently, clearly they may try to do the same thing. So the only thing we can implore, again, and I said, we have to find mechanism with the police, with our external observers, and even with the Electoral Commission themselves, that if any candidate will be disadvantaged by the behavior of any group of people, whether it is UPND, whether it is other political party, that the candidate who they are supporting should be sanctioned. That is why earlier on, we as WOZA, under the auspices of our chairman, Saki, said the Electoral Commission should sanction the candidate in Mazabuka who those cadres were protecting to try and stop Gary. Because people have to have some form of responsibility, you know. So I think those are some of the issues which we can discuss.
All right. I think the president also made a statement earlier when that video went viral, where he said a few days ago, I made it clear that electoral lawlessness will not be tolerated, and that all perpetrators, regardless of political affiliation or social standing, would face the full force of the law. That position remains firm and unchanged. He also went ahead to say that I therefore expect law enforcement agencies to move swiftly and professionally to arrest all those who are responsible. Zambia is governed by laws, not intimidation, violence, or mob conduct. And I think if we're to look at some of the photos that we were able to get from that, one can still identify some of those cadres who were also visible, and their faces, I think one is able to tell. It's just a matter of probably police identifying the suspects, such as that person. I think one is able to identify, say, this is a person, and also that young man in a blue headsock, together with that other one who was
in the red and accosting Garincombe.
Together with their, I don't know whether he was their head or the one heading the whole entire group who went inside when Garincombe had managed to just, you know, get inside there, and he was there trying to stop him. So I think those are some of the people that one is able to identify, and the fact that the president has also said that those people should be arrested. Do you think this will help to bring sanity and also address the issue of cadreism? Because I think not long ago there was also a journalist who was attacked by some UPND cadres as well, as he was trying to conduct his professional duties.
Well, I mean, let me give the president a benefit of doubt, and hope that he means what he's saying. But the only way in which I can fully say that I've given him the benefit of the doubt is if the following happens. Number one, what you have been saying, that those people who are identifiable are now arrested, you know, and charged for the various crimes which they committed, and there's more than one. There's more than one crime there. There is assault, you know. There is breaching of the electoral regulations, and several others. So I think that let us see whether the police will take heed and take the necessary action that is required and arrest those people. Let us take heed whether the Electoral Commission, on the basis of them being identified, will sanction those people, because in some cases you are barred from even coming within a particular parameter of any other polling station because of what they've done. So if those sanctions are going to be done, and if the police are going to behave properly, then we will be able to give 100% benefit of the doubt that the president says what he means. If they won't do it, then what the president is saying is merely words. And it's very easy to say things and still instigate that things should be done. There is a story that the gentleman who is identified as in the red, the one who was accosting.
In the video.
They say that is related to State House somehow. Now,
okay.
I don't know whether that is true or not, but that is, I've seen it in, some people have been able to identify who he is and where he's related. So, if that is true, and I'm saying if that is true, then we should also see that the employers or where he's associated will also take action. That is when we will be able to believe that what is in fact being stated by the head of state is genuine. Yeah.
This is a lunchtime chat. We are discussing the ongoing ECZ filing in of nominations. You are aware that today those who are aspiring to stand as members of parliament are also filing in their nominations. We also have presidential candidates who are also filing in their nominations today. So if you have comments, contributions, you can call number appearing on the screen. And if you are following us live on Facebook, you can also drop your comments. How do you look at the video that we're just playing, and the video that is circulating online, where we see a UPND member, someone who supported the UPND, being attacked by fellow UPND cadres? So you can drop a text message to the number appearing on the screen. So we have a few people following that's on Facebook, some comments rather on Facebook, and this one is from Chansa Kennedy Kalandanya. And he says, have been listening to Muhabi Lungu's analysis since my Unza days in the early 1990s, and I'm convinced he is a true patriot of the nation. He means well. We need to support a candidate coming from the party with structures throughout the country. BM8 is one such. And then we also have other people just saying they're watching. Justin Simonza saying he's watching. And then Mbanga Ken says intra-party violence. So you can drop those comments, text messages to the number appearing on the screen. Probably as we get to conclude this interview, I also mentioned that we've seen a number of people coming together. Just today we saw PEP President Chanda Katoto with his running mate, who was now the president of the party, coming together, working together, and also the other alliances. What does this mean going forward? As we get to conclude on this interview, what's your expectation as we?
As I said to you earlier, the coming together of various groupings and people is always a good thing. You know, divided we fall, they say, and united we conquer. You know, united we win. I think it's always a good thing. But I think that it's not enough for us to have a situation where 26 people paid for their candidature. I think that is way too far. That is even more than 2016. And I think that in the end, we may still have more people on the ballot at the presidential level than we did in 2016. I think that is undesirable. And over the period of the last 2 years, myself, Ambassador Chulumanda, Kapembwa Simbao, who won 2 contests in Woza and in the Zambia we won, have been very clear that we should narrow the field, because at any given time there can only be one. And I think that as we go towards the elections, the collective of the Zambian people, should all of us, as I said, try to think strategically and be able to identify one person out of those people, because we don't want to split the vote. Obviously, from our perspective, as I said, we are supporting Brian Mundubile. We think the match between Brian Mundubile and Muhabi Zulu is a good one. I know that there are other people who are supporting others, but I just want people to know the figures that I was giving. If we don't vote and think strategically, the possibility is that we will have the same person who is in government now, who is giving us a lot of difficulties, win. Okay, and I think that he is giving us difficulties. I'm not exaggerating. There are fears, legitimate fears of how can you have 77 bills in Parliament pass within a week? Are those members of Parliament reading those bills? Are those members of Parliament going to their people to discuss those bills? How can you have a situation where the UPND does what they want to do at any given time, irregardless of what anybody else says? The American ambassador says something, he's a bad person, it's undiplomatic. You try to say something about ethnic issues, they put you in jail. You try to say something, I mean, everything that anyone who gives an advice is a bad person. So we have to think whether we want this to continue or whether we have to put our pride down and be able to select someone who can give us a victory. And I think that if we are normal people, there should be no debate about this. There shouldn't be any debate. We should not split the vote, particularly in Lusaka and the Copper Belt, and then in the other 2 large voting blocks that we think we can win. So for me, that is really my let's come together. People can still withdraw. I mean, there are some people really, honestly speaking, my dear, who have no chance in hell of getting 2% or 1%. And I think that it just makes sense. Some people were saying, oh, we are doing this because we don't know whether Mundubile will be allowed to file, and therefore we want to be on standby. Mundubile has now filed, and he has filed together with Muhabi. So some of you who think that you can't win, I think do the honorable thing. Withdraw and support the ticket that can win. I mean, that is my advice.
They're talking of the 100,000 kwacha that they paid, the nomination fee.
Yeah, but I also paid my nomination fee at Tonse when I was applying for Lusaka Central. I can also tell you, my dear, that in the political arena that I've been since I came back from the diplomatic service, I've been fighting it out for the last 3 years. And to do so is not cheap. And I was doing all of this. I was spending a lot of money in order to be able to build an organization which might be able to put forward candidates. And I was hoping that I would be a candidate. And here it is, 3 years later, I've spent so much money and I'm not a candidate. Now, I can decide to be very sad. I can decide to start whining and blaming everybody in the world. But I was doing this not primarily for myself. I was doing it because I thought that this was important for the country. And even if I am not the one at the front of the ticket, I have to think beyond myself. So all of those candidates who've spent 100,000, and I've spent much more than 100,000 of my own resources over the last 3 years to try and put our message across, and I've lost it because you can say because I'm not a candidate. However, I don't think I've lost, because we've been able to address the issues. We've been able to raise the issues which we think the Zambian people must be able to learn. And we still have an opportunity here to be able to change the government and put the right things. So PF learned because they lost government. They've changed. This government should also be taught a lesson. So they can lose 100,000, but they will be distracting all of us to stay in just because you paid 100,000.
So in short, the opposition unity you're calling for is to teach the current party in power a lesson.
Because every government that makes an undertaking to do things for the Zambian people and doesn't do what they did, they should be taught a lesson. That is what I'm saying. The PF were taught a lesson. And they thought they would win in 2021. If you remember, the Zambian people said no. We in the MMD in 2011, when I was in the MMD with Rupiah Band, I stood as well in those. The MMD were taught a lesson. The people of Zambia are the employers. If the employee is not doing what the employer wants to do, you fire the employee and hire somebody else. And if you rehire someone else, like as it happens in the West, where parties get defeated, they reform and they come back, which is what has happened to this Tonsi Alliance. We've reformed and we say, okay, we know the bad things. We're not going to do those bad things. We're not going to repeat these issues to do with cadreism. We're going to be very strong against corruption. We're going to be able to fix the constitution so that we don't have institutions which are less than cadres, for example. We're going to have a police force which will have power. If we are prepared to do this, then the people of Zambia should be able to say, okay, because so that is what I'm urging for. And believe me, it is not. I'm not against personal individuals in the opposition. There are some of them are very decent people, but in order for you to be decent, you have to put the interest of the country above your own interests.
All right.
Yeah.
Mr. Muhabi Lungu, thank you very much for making an appearance on Lunchtime Chat.
I'm very grateful. I'm sorry that I came unshaven and with my t-shirt, but I wasn't ready.
We understand it's the election period. This is where we come to the end of today's Lunchtime Chat. But of course, we still will be giving you more updates in regards to what is taking place, a nomination, a filing in of presidential candidates and them, as well as those that are aspiring to stand as members of parliament. We'll keep on updating you with that, because already SB, whose leader is Dr. Fred Membe, is already at the Mulungushi International Conference Center with his running mate Dolika Banda. Well, on Lunchtime Chat, we were looking at the ongoing ECZ filing in of nomination, and we're also asking a question in regards to some suspected UPND cadres who had attacked Gary Nkombo. Gary Nkombo is a member of the UPND. In the studio, I was joined by Mr. Muhabi Lungu, who is the WOZA Secretary General, and I've been your host, Taisia Chela. We're back again tomorrow at exactly 13 hours on Lunchtime Chat. Have a lovely afternoon. Goodbye.